For politics, the clue, once again, where do you see that clue? Very straightforward clue is there. That is that it's a Leo ascendant, and the 10th Rashi from Leo is always Taurus, which is a Venus ruled profession. That's one of the reasons why they will be attracted to politics. And you can see the political connection also from the Lagna Lord being in the sign of Gemini and the dispositor of the Sun, which is Mercury, being conjunct Venus. That's a clue of politics. And Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, all these three planets are influencing the 10th as well by Rashi aspect. So, Venus, of course, is the politician, is manifesting that 10th Rashi. Jupiter is Rashi aspecting and manifesting the 10th Rashi. Saturn is the 7th Lord, having an influence on the 10th Rashi. Mercury is the planet of communication and speech, which you need in abundance for politics, right? You're always on campaign giving speeches, and that is also Rashi aspecting the 10th. Mercury is also the 11th cusp lord, Rashi aspecting the 10th. Three professions we took care of. One is the administration, the presidency, the real estate business, and the third was the writing combination. And we also took care of his bankruptcies, right? We also need to take care of his hotel business and the business related to casinos and gambling. For that, we can see again the 8th cusp lord is Jupiter, is in the sign of Libra. Of course, it has got to do with business, right? It's the natural house of business, Libra. That's there, a direct connection. And in casinos, of course, you are using Jupiter, the money, and 8th house is the house of gambling and also the house of breaking the law. Jupiter is Rashi aspecting and influencing the Atmakaraka Mars. Alright, direct connection is there. 8th cusp lord Jupiter is Rashi aspecting and influencing the 10th cusp. Another connection we see here for breaking the law and also for doing some things which are wrong in general because of 8th lord influencing the 10th by Rashi aspect. Then we need Mercury involved in this equation because he is the gambler and he is the one who is setting up the institution, right? And for that, Mercury is conjunct Venus and Venus rules Jupiter. And all this is happening in the 12th house. Casino business also to some extent caused losses for him. That is pulled off. And still it's a business, right? It's not like it's not a business. For that we need the business combination, as I already explained. We have the 7th Lord Saturn conjunct Mercury. Jupiter, the 8th Rashi Lord, is Rashi aspecting the 7th. And he's manifesting it as well as he's got an influence on it. Then we see the influence of 8th Lord Jupiter on 9th Lord Mars by Rashi aspect. Saturn conjunction to Mercury, the planet of business, who is in turn ruling the Sun, who disposes the Atmakaraka. So all those combinations are also pulled off here. Then he had divorces, 3 marriages. And for that, of course, you notice that Mercury, the Dharakaraka, is in the 12th Rashi, conjunct the 6th cusp lord, which is Saturn, for creating losses of marriage. Why? Because one is the Dharakaraka is conjunct the 6th and in the 12th Rashi Adusthana, causing losses. Then the 7th cusp lord Saturn is in the 12th, causing losses of marriage. Okay, why losses here? One, it's Saturn in the 12th. He's a malefic planet, right? Then the 12th is Adusthana, and there are Trishita planets here. The Avashta also confirms it. Then we have Venus, the natural Karaka for spouse for a man, he is also in the 12th. He is conjunct Saturn, he is starved. And he is also Trishita. All those things again cause losses. Venus is also conjunct the 6th cusp lord, leading to problems in marriage. And many hidden relationships. Interestingly, there is a triple conjunction here, and he had 3 marriages. So hopefully this is the last of it, we don't know. But there is accounts of that. It's not been an easy route, you can see, with all these planets in starvation. Then he paid off a lot of money to all these women. That's also the 12th house of losses. Paying off the divorce, keeping them quiet because they had a lot of news about you. One woman wrote a book and she was going to expose him. So he went on filing a lawsuit. And that lawsuit is also the 6th house when Mercury is connected. So he uses his Mercury to file a lawsuit against his wife. Mercury is the Dharakaraka as well. The wife is seen through Venus also here. All that is going on in the 12th house. So he files a litigation against her. That's the sixth house. He wants to fight. He's always going to be a fighter. With Mars on the ascendant, and this Mars is in Maga, is at 26 degrees 46 minutes, is also same at 29 degrees 57 minutes for the ascendant. So this Mars is the most strongest influence on his life, along with Venus. You can see the 10th cusp lord, because it's very close to the degrees of the ascendant. Again, these are some advanced techniques, but he is going to fight, and he fought, and he came to a settlement in that situation as well. He uses his muscle power quite a strong way. You should see how he shakes hand with people. He pulls their energy towards them. He literally drags them towards them. That's the power of this Mars. He's a definitive bully. There is no doubt about that. Mars on the Lagna is the big bully that you'll see. And that bullying nature comes because of insecurities in his personality. That's that Sun Rahu. Just looking at Mars, don't go say he's a bully because he's in the sign of Leo. This is a very noble Mars in the sign of Leo, by himself, by placement. The bullying nature comes because of personal insecurities. That's happening because of that Sun Rahu conjunction and closeness of Saturn to Rahu. Alright, those are the things that is causing problems here. If that was not the case, this Mars, again, as I told you, could have been extremely powerful enough to do many things in the world. Then, of course, he's married to a foreign woman. That we have to see. There are many combinations for that. One, Mercury, the Dharakaraka, is in the sign of Cancer. That is the foreign sign. It's in the 12th, confirming it. Then it deposits Rahu. Definitively, 3 points already, we got it here. Then Venus, the natural Karaka for a man, he is also in the 12th. He is in the sign of Cancer, connected to Rahu. Then even Saturn, the 7th cusp lord, is in the 12th. He is also connected to Rahu. So 3 factors of foreign connections are there. You want a 4th one? I will give you that also. The Atma Karaka is Mars in the sign of Sagittarius in the Navamsha. You juxtapose that into the Rashi, and 7th from the Swamsha also he gets that Rahu, and the dispositor of Rahu is in the sign of Cancer. 4 factors pointing at foreign people. Not only foreign women and relationships, but also connections to foreign people and secretive connections, and it could be political in nature as well because you have Venus there. It could be business ties and even investments in foreign countries. He's invested heavily in Russia and other different countries of the world. He has got properties in China and other parts of the world. All that is seen because Mercury is the planet of business here. The 7th lord of business is also there. 10th cusp lord of career, which is Venus, is also in the 12th. So there you can have strong connections to foreign places and hidden nature of things, and even more powerful people you can see because of Saturn being there, the 7th cusp lord. All these are there. Why is there even power and authority? Even through the Sun and Rahu's dispositor being in the 12th. It could be connected to big governments and even malefic intention people because of that Sun Rahu conjunction, who don't have any good intentions towards the world. There is negative influences here. And the manipulative nature of his speech can also be seen not only through that Saturn Mercury conjunction, it can also be seen through Rahu influencing the 2nd cusp with that Sun Rahu conjunction. Okay, that's a very interesting way of looking at it too. Alright. And the magnetic nature of his personality, that also you can see not only through that Sun Rahu conjunction. 10th from the Sun is Rashi aspected by Moon and Ketu. Remember, Moon on the 10th, always influential things happen. People are going to find him charismatic. It's his charisma that got him that commanding position of the presidency. That is an important connection. You shouldn't miss that. 10th from the Sun is also Rashi aspected by Rahu and the Sun, including the Moon. So Rahu influencing the 10th from the Sun makes him extremely charismatic and popular. Then you can also see 10th cusp lord is Venus, and Venus is not doing anything great here. But 10th from Venus, you have to count forwards here. We are doing the Parashtriya astrology. 10th from Venus is ruled by Mars, and Mars is Rashi aspecting that, and that very strong, authoritative, dominating nature that is influencing the 10th from the 10th lord also. Amazing. We have to keep in mind the nature of relationship with his children. Okay, here you see that Jupiter is in the sign of Libra. It's also starved, and people speculate that he does not have full clear relationship with all his children. He has five of them, and not all of them are connected to that. And I think Ivanka Trump, she's into business, right? She's running her own clothing chain and all of that. That again, it's in the sign of Venus, and that you see with that Jupiter in the sign of Venus. And people also made fun about both of them that he had a liking for his own daughter. That's an unfortunate situation. You see that Jupiter is in the sign of Libra here, which is the sign of relationships. Then the seventh cusp lord is naturally what he's attracted to, and that also is conjunct Venus and Mercury. The interesting nature of this is it's in the 12th house, and it has a connection to Jupiter because Venus rules Jupiter. Jupiter is also the fifth cusp lord in this situation here. So that shows children. And that's a big problem if you notice, and why people made fun. He became again a sort of like a person feeding the media with all the garbage that the media needed. The media did a horrible job in his case. He enjoyed the spotlight, he took advantage of that. But the thing is, the media should have been more critical and they should have done an honest assessment. That is all I want to say. Whether you like the person or not, the media has no business personalizing their opinion and views and telling people whom to vote and not vote. For example, the Fox News, CNN, CNBC, all these talk shows. Who cares? I mean, you are not meant to give your opinion. If you're talking to people, an audience, you are supposed to just present the news as it is, the information as it is. It's the people that will decide whom they have to vote or not vote. You have to present the facts, and that's what a good Mercury does. And nowadays, everyone has an opinion. On Twitter, everyone gets an opinion. On Facebook, everyone gets an opinion. So, those are all things that are disrupting the mental, emotional state of the people. And nobody has that Viveka anymore. Remember, that is Viveka that is coming through that Mercury's ruled Gemini and Ketu's ruled Sagittarius axis. We see that the Viveka will be absent and you can't make the right kind of judgment, then you'll make all these blunders. That's what goes on for him. He himself did that, then the media did that to him. It was not a fair treatment. It's true that most of it could have been fake news, and of course, he denied that. He was thinking that there was fake news even when the right information was supported. Some of it could have been fake news, there is no doubt about it. But the nature of it was they were not treating him fair. They should have given him a fair assessment in the very beginning. And later on, they tried to be fair towards him, but that time he was not fair. So it became a toxic loop between him and media. That is one of the contributing factors for his failed presidency. Because it became like a self fulfilling philosophy, right? Self fulfilling prophecy that the media kept telling that he's going to fail, he's going to fail, he's going to fail. Eventually, he failed, and it ended in a very sore taste, right? They stormed the capital, and then it just became a mess in the last step. The kind of following that he had, he could have done many things, alright, but instead he became this cult narcissistic leader who led people into falling into their own pits, right? It's like this Pied Piper story where he's leading that rats into falling into that pit. That's basically what happened. Instead of him being the able bodied leader, he manipulated them and he convinced them that they should prepare themselves for all these negative things, unfortunately. It's a very sad situation. Toxic nature of the media and communication you can see with Rahu in Gemini. Rahu shows toxins. Another association of him and problems with media, he was the one who tried to bring regulation to social media, which was Facebook and Twitter and all of that. Of course, there was a lot of garbage there. People were not regulating that and they had a lot of control over many people's lives, private lives. They could have all the information. There was no proper management of that. He tried to bring regulation on that. He was strict in that, you can say. For the enforcement part, you can see that Mars from Leo is Rashi aspecting Capricorn, which is holding the sixth cusp. Remember, I told you Mars, when he's connected to the sixth, can become the policeman or enforcer. The sixth lord, which is Saturn in this case, is conjunct Mercury. That's also showing connection to social media. And Mercury, of course, rules the sun who deposits Mars. He also has a direct connection in that manner. then even by just looking at the sixth lord connected to Mercury, that is another way of looking at the enforcement on social media. And sixth lord is your enemies. For him, the bigger enemies were news, journalists, and his women, basically. He was strict in that, you can see, because you have a restricting planet which is Saturn influencing Mercury, and Mercury under the influence of Saturn will have the reins given to Saturn. So Saturn is always going to compress Mercury there. He won't let him float freely. Then of course he has the Lagna Lord in the sign of Gemini, which is that of media and communication. Mars is now connected to that because he's disposited. Now Mars has a connection to Mercury, right? Remember that these people can use their intellect in whichever way possible, and it can be manipulative, it can also be what you say as very defensive by nature. He is seen to be extremely defensive, but he also used his authority to regulate Facebook and social media and all of that. Continuously, we keep seeing people who have that Mars Mercury influence, they can keep fighting and only try to prove their point. And he muscled his view, he bullied his view through the campaigns before winning his presidency. He was so strong willed, he wouldn't even let other people speak. Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, even Joe Biden recently in the second election, there is no match for him. This is very powerful Mars. He is a bully, you don't have any doubt in that, but the way he pushes his arguments, right, he doesn't let other people speak. Even the moderator in those debates were not able to control him. That's that nature of Mars, influential on the sign of Gemini, with that Mercury being in starvation and that Sun Rahu influencing the second house, all of those things. So every single detail of his life you can take and analyze like that. You will find the same clues, the same answers. There is no doubt about that. Some of those things which he did was also needed, like I said, the regulation on social media, that was needed. You need this kind of a person also sometimes to bring very strong muscle power on your foreign countries, okay, your neighboring countries, because you don't want to budge to everything and anything they are going to tell. You have to stand up for yourself. You don't want to bully them, but you have to draw the boundaries between your country and their country, and your terms of regulation, your foreign policies, and your diplomatic ties have to be very strict, right? Especially when it comes to the big bully of the world, which is China. For that to stand up to them, you need a very powerful person. He could have been, like I said, there was a big possibility he could have done many powerful sanctions on them. One thing was they tried to restrict Huawei from capturing the 5G revolution, because the next revolution in 5G, which is the technology, the person who captures that will have access to all the data, and everything about anyone's life will be readily available to them. So they tried to stop China in its tracks. He had a lot of connections to China himself. He had a lot of business ties and investments in China and such. But the very nature of his chart, if it was only that Mars and there was no that Sun Rahu conjunction and very able bodied Sun, imagine Sun just being alone by himself in the sign of Taurus or in the sign of Cancer, no afflictions to the Sun, he could have just pushed those countries backward, okay, taken few steps back. It was possible, but it did not, unfortunately, thanks to that lack of skills and that impediment he created for himself. Another thing you have to keep in mind, the Sun and Mars as planets, they are always going to fight fair. You have to think 100 times before you point fingers at Sun and Mars, which are unafflicted, because they're always going to be fair and they're not going to make mistakes and they will never manipulate the system to get on the top. That's the reason we say, right, that in Ramayana, Lord Rama is the incarnation of Dharma and Satya. And Rama is considered to be the pure incarnation of the sun in astrology, Krishna to moon, and so on, like that. So, in Lord Rama, there is not one single character flaw, even though he is born into a human body. You cannot point at any singular flaw in his character in that epic of Ramayana. Whatever it is given in that situation, he did this best to manage that situation according to the dharmic conduct. So that's the power of Lord Rama, and is again related to the sun. Same for Mars, because Mars is nothing but sun at a lower level, which means is going to take the orders from the sun and execute it, but he is also still the planet of sattva, right? And sattva is nothing but your strength of character. And for Mars, how good a person's character, if you want to judge, will come down to how good their Mars is. Here, Mars by himself is fine. Even the Rashis of Mars are fine, but that affliction is going down to the dispositor of Mars, which is the Sun. And that's the big problem. So, if he had not manipulated his way into the campaigns and winning the elections, there was no need for that impeachment. Half of his time he spent on managing all these litigations and impeachment and lawsuits in his own country. He could not get anything done because constantly there was problems here, right? Because you notice that sixth lord Saturn is starved and is also conjunct the dispositor of the sun and Rahu Mercury, causing problems to that power and authority also. And all these three starved planets are influencing the 10th house of action, right? Planet of action is Mars. 10th from Mars is also the sign of Taurus, influenced by these three starved planets, continuously one after another facing obstacles because of these Trishita planets. Situation was very horrible, you can see there. So, plenty of such indications are there in the chart. For him, he is quite lucky when it comes to life in general with such a chart. But when it comes to his presidency, he was not able bodied, neither was he able to use that luck in his favor, unfortunately. This is the reason I believe that you have to pay attention to all these planets first. And I'm glad I had to show Donald Trump's chart in the very end because I know a lot of people are supporters of Donald Trump. Much of my clients who come to me, and as well as the people on the Kala forum in the past, have been like that. And many people who are nationalist by nature, they support him. I'm not against that. I'm not taking any sides with any political party, either Republican or Democratic. I'm not interested in that either. But for me, I want to do a fair assessment. And for him, as I told you, there was an unfair treatment from the media. It is true. But what you want to see is that the technique that I showed in the past 50 charts, if you apply the same technique to him, it is the same truth now. You cannot deny that. Whether he's a grandiose narcissist, whether he's a bad person, a good person, we don't care. It is still he's an entity of God, and he was meant and he was needed for the world. He rose at a time when the world was needed, okay? And the Kala Sarpa Yoga is there, is part of the destiny of the world. Everyone had to face this impact. Good or worse, he was there. Hitler was the same. For good or worse, he was there. Saddam Hussein is the same. We are all talking about one Donald Trump. But there have been multiple such big crusaders, malefic people in the world in the other context that disrupted the world and the peace in the world, right? So who is going to talk about them? Those things are also important in this situation. Another interesting foreign policy that he had was with Iran for the nuclear deal. He tried to bring sanctions on all of them. And that's what I mean to say. His ideas and intentions were very clear, but the way it was executed was not right. The ban on foreign people, the immigration basically, and trying to avoid all the Muslim people from coming to USA, the building of the wall. He tried to use his construction brain, which was his buildings that he was constructing the Trump Tower, to build the wall. But is it any practical situation? By building the wall is not going to solve the problem. It's an impractical Mars. It is the same bricks that we use to build a wall, and it is the same bricks that you are going to use to build a bridge. You could have rather built a bridge and had a good diplomatic tie with the countries. That doesn't mean, of course, you're going to let everyone and anyone come into your country. You don't want drug peddlers, rapists, and all these people to come into your country and cause problems. And it is true, in those countries, the neighboring countries, you have all the good, bad, and ugly. You will get all of it when you open the borders. Okay, not only America, every part of the world. It's just like buying apples in a supermarket. You will have the good apples and the bad apples in any given situation. So you can't tell every time you're going to get the bad apple, and you can't tell every time you'll get the good apple. Life is like that. Life is a equal possibility for all kinds of chances, right? On top of that, we also know that to just come to a conclusion and not execute it in the right way, not sticking to your word, is a big problem. So he never took action in that context. He did not stick to that word, and trying to separate the Muslim, again the foreign people, from entering USA, trying to separate their families. You see the 12th house of separation because he banned the Muslims from the Middle Eastern countries from entering. Their visa situation was not clear. They could not enter the country. So he created separation between families, and he did the same for the South American countries and the Central American countries because of refugees not being entered into USA. It was not an easy thing. Like I said, Angela Merkel in Germany, she took many people in during the refugee crises in Syria and all of that. But at some point, even they had to draw the boundaries. Germany is a country that opened up their borders now, and they're trying to wash their blood off the hands, and they're trying to wash their sins since the 1970s after the World War and after Hitler did such damage to the world. Now they're trying to be nice and mend their mistakes. At least it's good that they're looking into that. They're considering the possibility of solving those mistakes that they made in the past. Now they're trying to be welcoming and also approachable, and they're trying to integrate the society in a more harmonious and racially positive way, not having segregation. But in USA, at a time and day now where modern things should have been more easy, not having problems with the local people and also having problems from the foreign people, he could have handled it in a more possible, straightforward way, but he didn't because of those three planets there. You see, all of them are Trishita, they are starved, they are in the 12th, and that's the big problem for him. Okay, he could not strategize correctly, implement those strategies in the right way. Instead, he just went out taking all those actions without thinking it through. That's the nature of a Mars connected to Rahu here and that Sun and Rahu conjunctions. No plan thought out. Again, a very superficial plan because it's happening in the sign of Gemini. On the top surface plan, no proper execution methodology, no attention to details basically. So that is the nature of his Rashi chart. Most of it we have covered. We will come back to it in a bit. Let's quickly see the Navamsha for the same careers and all of that. So in the Navamsha, Mars, the Atmakaraka, is in the sign of Sagittarius. Again, a very purposeful, driven person. Jupiter is influencing that and is creating the wealth combination. Let's take out the profession of construction and the real estate. Okay, we need the fourth cusp lord involved here, which is Saturn. Saturn is not directly influencing Mars, but one interesting thing is Mars is actually in an odd sign, and 10th from Mars we have Mercury. Remember, I told you for real estate, business, and construction we need Mars and Mercury involved. Both of them are there. 10th from that being Mercury becomes a career planet. Both Mars and Mercury are influencing the 7th cusp of business. Venus rules the 11th cusp, which is that of gains. Is conjunct Saturn, who rules the 4th cusp. Alright? And Mars and Mercury are connected to Saturn through the nakshatras, because if you notice in the D1 chart, all of them are in the Pusha and Punarvasu nakshatra. So because now Venus and Saturn are in the Pusha nakshatra and Jupiter is ruling the Punarvasu nakshatra of Mercury, and Mars and Jupiter are conjunct in the D9 chart, they will have an influence to all these planets because of the nakshatras here. So you have to catch the subtlety of the nakshatras. And for business, of course, we can see that the planet Mercury is conjunct the second cusp, he is aspecting the seventh cusp, and he has a connection to Venus through the influence of the nakshatras that I just explained. Okay, those three are pulled off. For the presidency and all of that, once again, we see that exalted Sun and is conjunct Rahu. Once again, that combination to put him on the top of the food chain that we see. Then the 10th cusp is also ruled by the Sun and is in exaltation. It is connected to the Atmakaraka Mars because Mars rules the Sun and Rahu. A very straightforward conjunction here. And you notice also that the importance of Moon in the 11th Rashi from the ascendant, once again for the charisma and the public fame and still people following him, and the strong nature of the nodes. And it's again a full moon. Remember that same influence is going on in the D9 chart. Moon actually is in the sign of Libra as well, which is that of politics. 11th from the Lagna is holding the moon. 10th from the Lagna is having Mercury, very powerful connection here. You can see the real estate business even through the Sun because he is the 10th cusp lord. So Sun is in the sign of Aries, which is that of Mars, and Mars is the Atmakaraka. Fourth cusp lord Saturn influences the Sun. Then Venus, who rules the 11th cusp, is Rashi aspecting the Sun. Both of them, both Saturn and Venus, Rashi aspecting the Sun. Then, of course, we see that they are all connected to Mercury through the nakshatras, as I explained. That's another way of paying attention to that. For the writing combination is pretty straightforward because in the Swamsha, which is the sign of Sagittarius, we get the ninth cusp here. Mars is here. Mars is not going to be the writer, but we have Jupiter in the same Swadhisthana chakra, right? Jupiter will be influencing Sagittarius and manifesting it. We have a connection to Moon because third from Mars is holding Venus, who disposits the Moon. So Moon and Jupiter are placed in third and fourth from the Atmakaraka or the Swamsha. That takes care of the writing combination. All of them have to influence the third cusp here. Jupiter Rashi aspects the third cusp and he rules the ninth cusp, pulling off that writing combination. Of course, he has to make gains from selling those books. Moon, who is the most important writing planet, is Rashi aspecting the 11th cusp and is also disposited by Venus, who rules the 11th cusp. Nice. Those things are being pulled off here. In the Navamsha, Moon Rashi aspects the third from the Atmakaraka, which is Aquarius. Third from Atmakaraka is also holding Venus. Fourth from Atmakaraka is Rashi aspected by Mercury. And Mercury is also Rashi aspecting the... Here we have all the writing combinations, which is third from the Atmakaraka aspected by Moon with Venus there. Fourth with Jupiter there and Rashi aspected by Mercury. And the writing houses are also connected. For the casino business, this is also pretty straightforward. The 8th cusp lord is Jupiter here. He has to be influenced by Mercury, right, for gambling. And Mercury is Rashi aspecting that. Then we also need connections to the 7th house of business. And Jupiter and Mercury both are Rashi aspecting that. In addition to that, we need the gains or losses involved. Here the 12th cusp is involved. So it was more of losses. We don't have a direct connections to Venus here, the 11th cusp lord. So that makes sense for the casino business. For writing, of course, we also need the 5th cusp involved, and Mars was actually ruling the 5th cusp and is in the conjunction to the 9th cusp. That connection also is there. Then for the Sun, for the power and authority, we see that we need the 11th cusp involved, right? And for that, the 11th cusp lord is actually Venus, who is Rashi aspecting the Sun. Once again, what is interesting here for him is that from the Atmakaraka, we don't see any strong connections to these Leo and Aquarius axis. But if you see the Sun, who is the 10th cusp lord, Sun is actually in that powerful sign of Aries, right? Who is exalted and is conjunct Rahu. Keeping the Sun as the focal point and fixing this Rashi, if you count 11 places, you get Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. Now we have a very powerful position for Sun, Rahu and Saturn because it's also influencing the 11th from that. If you treat Aries as the Rashi, right, the 7th Rashi will be ruled by Venus and he is also going to be in the 11th. That also is another connection to power and authority and for the presidency. So now we have him serving the public, which is that Mula Trikona Saturn in the sign of Aquarius, and he is the leader, and that's in the sign of Aries, which is that exalted Sun influencing the 10th. The pity is that Rahu again disrupting that equation. In his most of the charts, you will see that Sun Rahu conjunction because it's a very tight conjunction. Is born to the eclipse, so there is no doubt about that. Then you can also notice that the father was also a businessman and again he was also a real estate developer. So for that, the Pitri Karaka is the moon, which is ruled by Jupiter. Of course, the sun is the natural Karaka for father. Moon is disposited by Jupiter, who is in the sign of Libra. His connections to the third cusp is there. It's in the sign of Libra, means business is indicated here. But most important connection is that Mars is on the sign of Leo. Same connection as in Donald Trump, because Sun is in the sign of Gemini. So now we have a connection between Mercury and Mars, even for the father, which is the Sun, showing the real estate business. So he was also very successful, you can see, because the 11th cusp is involved. Father could have been narcissistic himself. Father has not taken care of Donald Trump as a very nice, lovable kid. And as a compensation for that, Donald Trump was seeking so much attention. Because father never paid any attention to him. You can probably see here with that Sun Rahu conjunction. Even Moon is conjunct Ketu. He has a very unique relationship with the father. Pitrikaraka is the moon. Same for the mother. We are going to see this in a bit with more details in Wikipedia. But it's true. And we also notice that Moon Ketu conjunction in the 5th cusp here. Very unique relationship with his children, his dynasty, his brainchild, his creation, also the business that he is going to run. It's a interesting thing with Ketu influencing the 5th cusp here.
Notice also that Ketu will be Rashi aspecting Virgo from the sign of Sagittarius. That's the 2nd cusp. This also makes him have problems with his speech. So he actually fumbles and cannot pronounce many of the words when he's speaking.
So in the Navamsha, let's also see the media entertainment profession. So in this case, of course, we need Mercury, Venus influencing the 3rd cusp and the 7th cusp here. So Mercury is Rashi aspecting the 3rd cusp and the 7th cusp. Because he is Rashi aspecting the Atma Karaka, he becomes a career planet. Alright. Then we also see that Venus needs to be involved in this situation, but Venus is not directly connected. Alright. But what we can confirm is through the Sun. The Sun rules the 10th cusp, right? He is the career planet. And Sun is in the sign of Mars, so is connected to the Atma Karaka. The 10th cusp Lord Sun is Rashi aspected by Venus. And the Atma Karaka is Rashi aspected by Mercury and is Rashi aspecting the 7th cusp and the 3rd cusp, which confirms that media profession. The Sun, Mars and Mercury, 3 planets are pulling it off. Of course, he was no big actor or something. He was just on the media television show. He has made some brief cameo appearances in movies and all of that. But it's just for appearance sake. He's not a perfect actor or anything. That's why you see that indirect connections going on in the Navamsha. Alright. So next let's go through some other fine events about his life. So when it comes to wealth, it's apparent that one of the individuals actually tried informing that Trump was not actually a great billionaire or something. Okay, it was journalist Jonathan Greenberg. He reported in 2018 that Trump, using the pseudonym John Barron and claiming to be a Trump organizational official, called him in 1984 to falsely assert that he owned in excess of 90% of the Trump family's business to secure a higher ranking on the Forbes 400 list of wealthy Americans. But it's not true, and he tried to manipulate that. Once again, we see manipulation of wealth happening because Sun and Rahu influencing the 2nd house of wealth. Of course, that Rashi of Taurus is Rashi aspected by 3 starved planets. That's also causing the issue here. Trump's tax returns from 1985 to 1994 show net losses totaling $1.1 billion over the 10-year period, in contrast to his claims about his financial health and business abilities. The New York Times reported that year after year, Mr. Trump appears to have lost more money than nearly any other individual American taxpayer. And that's a strange thing, right? But for us, it's not a surprise. You see the 3 starred planets in the 12th Rashi. Very clearly, we can find out that. Particularly, it is Saturn in the 12th. That's always a tough placement. And we see that Saturn also is the 7th Lord here. Trump has a total of over $1 billion in debts secured by his assets, according to Forbes report in October 2020. $640 million or more was owed to various banks and trust organizations. Lenders include Deutsche Bank, UBS, and Bank of China. Approximately $450 million was owed to unknown creditors. The value of Trump's assets exceeds his indebtedness, according to the report. So it's a clear cut situation with the 12th Rashi. We clearly understand what's going on with this wealth and the taxes and the losses, everything. A very funny statement he makes. Trump says he never has drunk alcohol, smoked cigarettes, or used drugs. He sleeps about 4 to 5 hours a night. He considers exercise a waste of energy because he believes the body is like a battery with finite amount of energy which is depleted by exercise. Interesting comments he makes, and that battery concept is nothing but Mars. Mars is the energy in the body always. Of course the sun is the vitality, but Mars is the sattva, the energy. But Mars is nice in his chart, right? In the sign of Leo, is energized, is ready to charge. But the problem is that a good Mars is like a soldier who is going to exercise. Here we see that Mars is connected to Rahu, and that ruler of that Mars is also connected to Rahu because of the dispositorship. We have problems here. And even in the signs of Mars, we have Rahu in the Navamsha. Let's see the D30 chart. So in D30, you notice that Mars is severely starved in the signs of Mercury, which is causing major problems for Mars. He is an extremely lazy person. He has very bad diet, and here Saturn is also afflicted because Saturn is Rashi aspected by the nodes. We have Mars and Saturn influence going on the Lagna. That itself is a big problem. Whether he smokes and drinks and all of that, not necessarily. Having a severe affliction, you can see, because we can notice that of course Saturn is delighted by Jupiter as well. Mercury is there in the picture, and even in the Rashi chart, we see Mars is good. Mars is good, the want power will be there. Probably he doesn't smoke or anything like that, we can see. But he has some drinking problems which we can notice because Venus is starved and also Saturn is starved. There is weaknesses severely to the body. Saturn in this kind of weak avasthas and also in the Trimsamsha, being influenced by the nodes can be a problem. Being influenced by Mars can be a problem. The good thing is Saturn has mixed influences, some from the nodes, some from Mars, but at the same time we also have good influences from Jupiter and Mercury. So that is probably supporting him. He's lived at least 80 years now. So it's full life in that sense. That his longevity is good. And of course having a very powerful Mars on the ascendant is always going to make you have stability when it comes to your health. It's not necessarily a planet that can protect your longevity, but also we see that Jupiter is Rashi aspecting Mars. There are other factors also in support of his longevity, which is the Lagna Lord in the 11th and all of that. So Donald Trump is apparently the only president that has held office who has been impeached twice and has been acquitted. That's something very unique about him. And that just shows you the very difficult nature of that bad Venus in the chart for politics. So Mars is okay, right, as I told you, but the ruler is afflicted. But in order to have a good relationship in politics with other people and also to have diplomatic ties, and when you lose, you have to accept that all that comes from your Venus, because Venus, of course, is the opposite nature of Mars. He's not going to fight, and he's a planet that can graciously accept defeat unless he is also afflicted, or Jupiter can also do that because of wisdom. Jupiter is also starved in the sign of Venus here. That's a big problem. Venus is starved, Jupiter is starved. All these things are causing major disruptions for him, unfortunately. So he tries to instigate all these problems and becomes impeached, but he gets away from that every single time because he's got that nice support of the 11th Rashi here. Life is always being on the rise for him, and that full moon is there in the support. right? And the other interesting thing for him is that Mars on the Lagna is producing the Raj Yoga, so it's always one after another getting away from it. But you not notice the significance of his chart in the D1 for getting away with things. It's mostly in the D9 because the choices you make in the D1 is resulting in the D9, right? And that's basically it. Here, Jupiter is protecting Mars, Mercury is very strong. For legalities, he is able to find a way around it, and that's really nice. Mercury in the sign of Virgo. On top of that, we have an exalted Sun, and Saturn himself is doing okay here. It's in Mula Trikona supported by Venus. So, all these things are somehow he's going to find a way to protect himself.
Going back to the Rashi chart and also about his relationships, we discussed four factors that make him have foreign spouses, connections to business in foreign places, and such. Let me describe the fifth and sixth factor also. You can notice that the seventh from Mercury is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in the sign of Cancer. Seventh from Mercury shows both the business and the spouse because Mercury is the Dharakaraka and Mercury is the business planet as well. Then same thing for Venus. Venus is the natural karaka for spouse for a man. Seventh from Venus is again ruled by Saturn in the Rashi chart, and Saturn is back in the sign of Cancer. It has a connection to Rahu also because Mercury rules Rahu and is conjunct Saturn. So same thing for Mercury, same thing for Venus, same for Saturn. So from six different points of view, we see the foreign connections to business and spouse.
What is interesting for him is that the Trump name has been licensed for various consumer products and services, including foodstuffs, apparel, adult learning courses, and home furnishings. According to an analysis by the Washington Post, there are more than 50 licensing or management deals involving Trump's name, which have generated at least $59 million in yearly revenue for his companies. So those are very interesting thing because his name itself is a brand. And that is interesting, right? Because you see that Rahu is influencing the second house here. That Lagna Lord Sun is also Rashi aspecting influencing the second house. And the second Lord is Mercury here. And he's in the 12th. Of course, he's encountered a lot of losses from all these brandings. Not every company that he endorsed has been successful, but he also made some profit, right? And that's because of people using his name. That Rahu influencing the second house. Very nice situation here. As of April 2018, Trump and his businesses had been involved in more than 4,000 state and federal legal actions, according to a running tally by USA Today. That's a lot. That's enormous amount of legal law cases on him. You notice that the sixth lord is Saturn. He is the one that is severely starved. It's in Trishita. No matter how many cases they keep slapping against him, it's still going on building. It's all in the 12th house there.
Next, a few points on his Digbala. In his chart, you can notice that Mercury is close to the ascendant. He has Digbala. Jupiter not too far behind. He also has Digbala. Mars has very nice Digbala. However, the problem is actually Moon is away from the ascendant. So there is lack of Digbala for the Moon, and for the emotional part of life he is going to suffer. Venus is close to the ascendant, also pretty much close to the fourth house. Not so much of a Digbala. Venus could have been better, but the emotional planets have low Digbala. So in terms of his emotional fulfillment and relationship choices, or in general any form of choices, he is going to suffer. But what is the most important planet having the lowest of the Digbalas? Saturn, right? It's the worst of all. Saturn is close to the first house, so he has the lowest of the Digbala. What does he do? Basically, he makes a mess, always complaining, always criticizing, a bit lazy also you can see, instead of getting the job done. And again, that emotional starvation and his worrying attitude, because Saturn is in the sign of Cancer. He projects his worries to the people of the country rather than solving it.
In 1988, Trump purchased the defunct Eastern Airlines shuttle with 21 planes and landing rights in New York City, Boston, and Washington, D.C. He financed the purchase with $380 million from 22 banks, rebranded the operation the Trump Shuttle, and operated it until 1992. Trump failed to earn a profit with the airline and sold it to USA. So he's also had a business with airlines. Very important. Here, very critical things are going to be seen. So please note this. It's a very important technique. The 10th house in general is the house of the sky, is the Vyomasthana in astrology. The 7th house is the travels. Alright. Of course, any travel can be seen through the 7th house. And for vehicles, we need Venus involved. Venus has to be connected to the 10th house now because it's connected to the sky. And here Venus rules the 10th cusp, is Rashi aspecting the 7th, and all these have to be connected to the Lagna Lord or Atmakaraka. It's directly happening here because the Lagna Lord is the Sun who disposits the Atmakaraka Mars, and he is in the 11th Rashi for business gains, right? But the dispositor Mercury is in the 12th, leading to losses, and Mercury is conjunct Venus, and is Rashi aspecting the 7th house of business, the 10th house of career, along with 4th house of vehicles. All these three planets are Rashi aspecting. So his business was also related to vehicles, particularly related to the sky, the 10th house. It led to losses because it's in the 12th, it's connected to the 7th house, the 4th house, and the 10th house by all these three planets. He probably had a Trishita again here, right? It did not lead to any fulfillment, whatever he expected. Same thing in the Navamsha. You can see that Venus is conjunct the 4th cusp, and we need the 10th cusp involved. 10th cusp Lord is the Sun, is exalted. Venus is Rashi aspecting the Sun. We need the business planet Mercury involved, is Rashi aspecting the 7th cusp, right? And all of this has to be connected to the Atmakaraka. Mercury Rashi aspects Mars. Then we have a connection to the 10th cusp through the Sun. Sun is Rashi aspecting Venus, and the 4th cusp is involved. Mars Rashi aspects the 7th as well. So it pulls off that connection to vehicles, and particularly the vehicles in the sky because of the 10th cusp here. The nice thing is, again, with vehicles like that, it's all about public service, right, with airplanes. And you notice also the sign of Aquarius here. And most often, of course, it is going over the oceans, the body of water, which is Aquarius. That also you notice with Venus in the connection to the 4th. The interesting thing is, you will notice time after time that when Venus is in exaltation, you will get all these expensive vehicles, luxury vehicles, and all of that. We saw, for instance, in the case of Sadhguru that he gets Venus in exaltation and he drives helicopters and all of that. It's the most abundant or the extravagance when it comes to vehicles or the luxury cars. Luxury cars are one thing, okay, but airplanes or jets and helicopters are another level. It's a unique thing, right? It's a speciality. So that's that exaltation that gives it. And you can also notice about Elon Musk, he also gets Venus in exaltation in his chart. If you get the chance to study it, please check and you'll find that Venus will be exalted in the Navamsha for him. That's very important because he makes all these exalted vehicles. And for him, even it is about spaceships and sending it to Mars. So there are some very unique connections. Again, if you know or have access to Kala Forum, I've also analyzed the chart of Elon Musk at one point. So it was 4 or 5 years ago before he became this famous. And you can see I've made the same derivations about his chart as well. In 2004, Trump co-founded Trump University, a company that sold real estate training courses priced from $1,500 to $35,000. After New York state authorities notified the company that its use of the word university violated state law, its name was changed to Trump Entrepreneur Initiative in 2010. So it's still a founding thing. He did not probably teach in that, I'm not aware. But it's a founding thing and it's about real estate, right? So we see Mars in the sign of Leo, where he was teaching about real estate. He was the founding father for that, and that is taken care of. He created his own business. He was the entrepreneur for that university. And if you want to see the teaching involved in this, you can also see because the ninth cusp lord is also Mars, and his Rashi aspecting the third cusp. Those two things are taken care of. The teaching planets are also connected here, which is Moon is conjunct the fifth cusp of students, and Moon is disposited by Jupiter, is Rashi aspecting Mars. Venus is also connected to this because Venus rules Jupiter and the third cusp, and is connected to Mercury, one of the planets of communication and business, right? He was selling courses. Then the Lagna Lord Sun is in the sign of Mercury. Mercury is conjunct Venus, the teaching planet, at seventh Rashi is Rashi aspected here, and even the seventh Lord is connected. So same combinations, different professions, different time frames of his life. So then in the Navamsha, it's the same situation. Mars and Mercury are Rashi aspecting each other, and the seventh cusp is there for giving the business related to that. And of course, we need the teaching planets involved. Moon is disposited by Venus, right? Moon Rashi aspects the 10th cusp, becomes a teaching planet. And we also have Moon in the sign of Venus, that makes it about teaching. Venus disposits all of this and is Rashi aspecting the Sun, who is the 10th Rashi Lord. More importantly, we also see that Rashi aspect of Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury to the 7th cusp and 3rd cusp. All these are pulling it off for making it about financial success. Jupiter Mars conjunction gives the money there. So, same situations, lot of things like that you can find.
Lastly, one point on his Rahu Ketu axis. You can notice that Rahu is on the 11th cusp conjunction, Ketu is on the 5th cusp. That also will behave like the Leo Aquarius axis, which is already consistently we have seen. It's connected to the kingship or the aristocracy and the democracy, which is the opposite sign, which is the sign of Aquarius. So in his chart, there are multiple factors that are supporting for his presidency. One is that Ketu conjunct the 5th cusp, Rahu conjunct the 11th cusp, Sun Rahu conjunction, Mars in the sign of Maga forming the Rajyoga in the Lagna, the full moon, the Kala Sarpa Yoga, the eclipse birth, many such factors, even in the Navamsha, the Sun Rahu conjunction, are all supporting for his presidency.
So, I think we have covered majority of his life events through astrology. Next, I think we can start with the card analysis.